everybody. Welcome to Disability Voices United's SDP Connect. I'm standing further away than I normally do because I wanted you all to see our t-shirt from last year's self-determination conference, which was called All In for Self-Determination. And the reason it was called All In is because last year was the first time that everybody had access to the self-determination program in June of 2021. So we've now been over a year, and we have an exciting announcement that you can see above me here. Here is our logo of our upcoming conference. It will be virtual. It is called Breaking Through Barriers, Advancing Self-Determination. We are very excited about this program. It will be virtual because we made an important assessment that we did not want our conference to be a super spreader event because we represent the disability community, and there are many, many people who have a higher likelihood of a poor outcome of COVID. In fact, I'm not sure if everyone saw a study, it just was released this week, showing that people with developmental disabilities were 4 times more likely to die of COVID. So we are doing it virtually. Hopefully it's our last time doing it virtually, and next year we will be back in person and embrace each other. But I am really excited to tell you about the program, and I want to introduce Kira Ciriola. Kira is, I would call our conference coordinator, because they are handling the whole everything that you're going to experience on this online platform is because of all of Kira's hard work. We're using this very cool platform called Huva, and Kira is going to actually explain a lot more at our next SDP Connect on how to do it, any kind of details around it. But we're just giving you a brief overview while we're waiting for our guest speaker, Jim Knight, to join us. He is on his way and will probably join us around 5. So I'm going to have Kira share the screen and we can get started. Great. So the self-determination conference, as we said, was Breaking Through Barriers, Advancing Self-Determination. It will be a one-day conference online, Friday, December 2nd, 2022, from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And this is going to be a little bit different than the conferences we've had in the past. This is not really a how to move into the program, a how to build your budget, a how to create your spending plan. What is a person-centered plan? It is not really SDP 101. And the reason why we're not doing that is because that's why we have SDP Connect. SDP Connect, we have a library filled, and probably you'll find in the chat that if you go to theinterchange.org, our SDP website, you will find over 50 videos from SDP Connect about every possible basic issue that exists. What this particular conference is about breaking through barriers. Barriers that participants face in moving into the program or moving into your 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year. Barriers that independent facilitators face in assisting their clients. Barriers that financial management services face, FMSs, when they're trying to help their clients, or barriers that participants face when working with IFs or FMSs. And barriers that regional centers face in trying to implement the self-determination program. And this is going to be a solutions-oriented conference. This is not going to be where we bitch and complain, because we know how to do that really, really well. But this is going to be a conference where we're going to come together as a group to break through these barriers to ensure a successful self-determination program for the long term. And there are some places where there's successes happening. We want to share those successes. So I'm going to ask to go to the next slide, Kira. Very fancy. I like the way it changes. So this is the rough outline of the conference agenda. We're going to get into way more details on the conference agenda at our next SDP Connect. But it will begin from 8:30 to 9 at our Exhibitor Expo. So we're going to have an online Exhibitor Expo. We expect to have, 40 to 60 exhibitors who will be service providers and FMSs and independent facilitators and advocacy organizations, lots of different groups where you can go into their virtual booth, which will be a Zoom room just like this, and you can sit and talk to them about your interests, find out what services they provide, how they can help you. It's a great way to think about your future in the self-determination program. The actual program will begin at 9 a.m. We'll start with an opening session from leaders, state leaders and legislators and administrative leaders in the self-determination program. And then we're going to have a roundtable of participants in the program giving testimonials about how self-determination changed their lives. And these are actual SDP participants who will give very specific examples of what kinds of services they have, how their lives are led, and how their lives have changed because of self-determination. It really starts us off in a very positive note to say, yeah, there's a lot of barriers, there's a lot of issues that we need to work through, but once you do, look at how your life changes. And isn't everything that you work hard to get kind of worth it at the end when your life is so much better? We'll have a short break where you can revisit some of those exhibitors in the expo. And then we're going to do our first set of breakout sessions. There will be 10 breakout sessions in the morning and 10 breakout sessions in the afternoon. And they are a range of issues which you will hear all about at our next SDP Connect. They are every possible issue you could think of related to the SDP. And I think you're going to find that you are going to be wanting to be at like 5 different sessions at the same time. But do not worry, because part of your admission fees is access to a YouTube channel with the recordings of all of the 20 breakout sessions, plus the main plenary sessions in the morning and in the afternoon. So you can go. I actually got an email from someone saying, I can't be at the SDP Connect at all, but I'm registering because I want access to all of those videos. So that's another thing one can do, is to sit and look at each video, to take your time to take notes. We're going to break for lunch, back to the exhibitors. And then at 2, then we'll have our second session of breakouts. And then, and by the way, every single one of our breakout sessions and our panels will include self-advocates or SDP participants, as well as family members. That's who we are as an organization. We are led by people with disabilities and family members. And this entire conference will be planned by people with disabilities and families. From 2 to 3:30, we're going to have our final panel. And those are going to be leaders in the self-determination program statewide. So it'll be the state council and the statewide self-determination advisory committee and DDS and other statewide organizations, the Association of Regional Centers, who have listened to some of the recommendations that have come out from the day, and to say, here is a plan, here's how we can move forward to improve the program and make it very, very successful. And then we will keep open our Exhibitor Expo for 1 more hour in the afternoon. Plus, we're going to have these cool things called Wonder Rooms, which if those of you came to our conference last year, these are the coolest things. We will do a training on Wonder Rooms for you at our next SDP Connect. Ed, remind me that I want you to do that. And so you'll see that we're going to have groups of people who are self-advocates. We'll have groups of maybe families with small children. We'll have groups of other, of maybe service providers, independent facilitators. These are it's a very cool platform and ways for you to connect with people. Okay. And you're going to learn all about this, all the details at the next meeting. We are, by the way, looking for sponsors, hire donor sponsors of the conference. If you are on our mailing list, you saw the link. Donors start at, or sponsorship starts at $2,500, and it gives you a whole set of benefits for each level. So I'm going to now go to the next slide, which I think is Kira's slide. Yes, go take it away, Kira.
Alrighty, hi folks. So I'm going to quickly go over the registration costs. So I'm also going to walk you through a demonstration in just a moment, but very quickly, we have several different types of tickets. Those include tickets for individuals who are served by the regional centers, their family members, and their direct care staff. And then we also have tickets for professionals, such as regional center staff, IFs, FMS, and advocates. All of our tickets have an early bird option. Please buy your early bird tickets as soon as possible, because after November 1st, the price will go up and we want you to have the cheaper price and get registered as soon as possible. Again, I'll walk through those ticket types in just a second. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Your registration includes a number of things, including all of the 20 breakout sessions that Judy was talking about. Those are going to be wonderful. My favorite is that it includes a mailed copy of our latest edition of our Thinking Outside the Box. Our previous copy is on the side over here, but our newest copy will have tons of updates and accurate information. You'll also have access to the expo and all of the exhibitors. Something that's not on here, but good to note, is you'll actually have access to the platform for up to 3 months afterwards. So you can access this information, the expo information, afterwards as well. Of course, like Judy said, you'll have access to the Wonder Rooms and networking, and Ed will be talking about that at the next SDP. And then, of course, we're also going to be recording all of our sessions. So like Judy talked about, even if you can't attend our sessions on the day of, it might still be nice to register so you can get a copy of all of those videos after the fact. And of course, you'll also get your book, which is amazing. Alrighty, so we're going to quickly go over how to register. Yeah, so I'm going to go through that now. Don't mind me while I make a very unsmooth transition as I unshare my screen and switch over. Unsmooth, as I stated. Okay, so for registration, we're going to walk through the steps, starting with visiting DVU's website, disabilityvoicesunited.org. If you're on our mailing list, you'll also have a direct link to this webpage. But if not, you can go ahead and visit our website. Our conference is listed under events and Breaking Through Barriers, which is the name of our conference. This page has all of the information about our conference, including the time, the cost, and the overview of what it will be about. Please make sure to read through. It has a lot of important information on it. For the Spanish version, you will click Versión en Español.
You're not sharing your screen, Kira.
Oh, no. Here I was just circling around everything. Yeah. I'm so sorry, folks. Here we go, back to it. Alrighty. So just very quickly, since I was not sharing my screen, I apologize. On our main page over here, it is under events and Breaking Through Barriers, which is the name of our conference.
It's also on the main page of the conference. If you go back to the main page, if you scroll down, there it is. You can click right through. There you go.
Click learn more. Thank you, Judy. Alrighty, so as I was saying, you can also click the version in Spanish. For Spanish registration, I'm going to click in here very quickly to show you an example. Please note for our Spanish speakers that some small parts of the registration are in English. This part right here says attendee registration. Note that all of the important information has been translated by our wonderful translators. We will also be providing a video in Spanish on how to register. This will be posted on our website and sent out to our mailing list as soon as it is ready. You can expect that in about 1 to 2 weeks. So I'm going to go back to our English version. Alrighty. And I'm going to show you a quick example of what the main registration page looks like. So here it is. As you can see, there are several different types of tickets. Please note that none of our tickets are free. Any ticket that is listed as free is for people who will be paying through either the self-determination program with their FMS, or for people who are paying for their ticket through the regional center. DVU will need confirmation of payment through your through your FMS or your regional center before you can attend the conference. There is also an option for self-pay for family self-advocates and family members and for professionals. Again, please register as soon as possible. As you can see, the sale ends on November 9th, 2022. For the early bird, and then the prices will go up after that. You can also, with your ticket, purchase any add-ons. We have our other book, Profiles in Self-Determination. This book is only available in English, I believe, at the moment. We also have our DVU face mask and our DVU t-shirt. Once you have selected the correct ticket type and the correct add-on, you'll just go ahead and click next down here. This will take you to a new page, and let me just select something random here to show you what that might look like, but I will do a self-advocate ticket.
I also just want to mention, somebody had asked in the chat whether you have to be in the self-determination program to go. Absolutely not. You can be interested in the self-determination program, but still in the traditional system. You can already be in the self-determination program in your second, third, fourth year. This is open to anyone interested. But the way you pay for it, by the way, is going to be different depending on whether you're already in the SDP or you're not.
Absolutely. And again, we're going to be providing a more detailed walkthrough of this process in a video that will be posted on our website in the next 1 to 2 weeks. But essentially from here, you'll just go ahead and fill out the questionnaire. And again, as Judy said, that will be different. I'm going to stop my share. That will be different depending on the type of ticket you get. So just make sure to walk through carefully, read everything, and answer all the questions. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me and I can try and help you with that process.
So I just want to explain how participants, individuals, family members can get funded from their regional center. So if you are not yet in the self-determination program, almost every regional center almost every regional center will pay for conferences for you every year, usually up to $200. So you should not have a problem with the $75 amount, but you do need to go to the your service coordinator and email them and say, I would like to go to this conference. We are vendored. You'll see our vendor number, and they'll be able to authorize you to be able to go through the traditional system. It's very different for people who are already in the self-determination program. You're going to need to make sure that that $75 cost per person is in your spending plan. If you already have a conference line item in your spending plan, you just need to then direct your FMS to pay for this, okay? If you do not have a line item for a conference, then you need to, and you've spent all of your money, you need to take that $75 from another line item and create a new one. It shouldn't be a big issue, although I know that just making even the smallest changes to your spending plan seem to be a ridiculous amount of effort. But you're going to need to do that before you get access to registering, because this registration page that Kira just showed you is actually for those who are using Regional Center for payment is actually your pre-registration. Once we get a confirmation that the Regional Center is paying or your FMS is paying, we then send you an email that will give you the actual registration. So you want to get this started as soon as possible. Okay. Are there any other, because we're going to go through this on our next meeting in much more detail, but if you want to get the process started now, let us know. Ryan, did you have a question on this? Go ahead. Although I think I saw something that you had in the chat. No, you don't have a question. Okay. Well, remember that with the registration comes not only access to the conference and all the conference recordings, but we will mail you, snail mail you, a copy of the latest edition of Think Outside the Box. This is last year's edition. We are completely rewriting it. Almost every single page is getting changed. And that's because as the program has rolled out statewide, there's a lot that's been changed about it. And I'm literally going through page by page and changing things to make sure it is completely accurate and up to date. This will be the only book out there. We're hoping to have it done by the end of October. This will be the only book out there that's up to date, by the way. I know that there is like Tri-Counties Regional Center has some book that regional centers have bought. It is, if you look at it, it is out of date by 3 years. At least this is up to date as of April 2021. So even these latest, I mean, just yesterday, and I just want to share this. I know that Jim is here, but I want to share with you very quickly the latest directive that just came out this week, which is the dollar amounts that are being provided to the local volunteer advisory committees at each of the regional centers. And this directive comes out every single year. And how the money can be spent has not changed. It still can be spent on recruiting independent facilitators, groups, workshops, joint training, coaching, spending plan development, and other needs that you decide. But what is different is how the funds were decided this year. This is very different than in previous years. The way that DDS is doing this year is all 21 regional centers get a base amount of $47,620. But the share of funding, the remaining funding, is targeted to ensuring equity within the program. What we know, particularly Latinos, are very, very underrepresented in the self-determination program. So what they're looking at is how many consumers are in that regional center who identify as non-white, and your funding is given to you based on that. So for example, Far Northern Regional Center, which I think is 97% white, is getting a much smaller amount of money out of this funding because they are not as diverse of a regional center. But I can tell you that my regional center, which is Westside, is a very diverse regional center, is ending up getting, I think, about $20,000 more than they normally get because of their diversity and the need for reducing the disparities within the self-determination program. So I will try to get this PDF into the chat so that folks can see it and read it. But it's really mostly of interest to people who are on the on local advisory committees, of which I know many people here are. So Lulu, did you have a question before we introduce our guest speaker?
Yeah. Sí, buenas tardes. Pues yo también estoy muy emocionada de poder entrar a esta conferencia. Nada más quería comentar la dificultad que tuvimos el año pasado porque no hubo grabaciones en español, solamente hubo en inglés y las grabaciones en español no hubo. También quería comentar que el año pasado nada más hubo las mejores conferencias, solo estuvieron en inglés y muy pocas en español y no pudimos tener un traductor ahí. La otra es, todavía estoy en espera de la traducción del libro. Me gustaría saber este año cómo lo van a hacer.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that. I think we got the sense of what you're asking for, Lulu. First of all, if you did not hear the interpreter, it means you did not select English as your language. You need to go down to reactions, not to reactions, sorry, to interpretations and choose English as your language. But Lulu was asking about whether all the sessions were going to be in Spanish, and unfortunately they're not. We're going to be having 10 sessions going on simultaneously, and the cost of providing interpretation at all 10 sessions would be prohibitively expensive for us. Everybody should remember, while we do a lot, we are a tiny, tiny little organization. We have very few staff and very little money. And so we provide interpretation at these meetings at SDP Connect completely out of our own pockets. We don't have funding for that. So we are trying to raise some money to provide interpretations at our conference, and we will be providing it. We will have 2 sessions out of the 10 completely in Spanish, and we will have 3 sessions on top of that that will be in English that will be interpreted in Spanish. So 5 out of the 10 of each sessions will be provided in Spanish. The book, by the way, is being completely translated into both Spanish and Korean, and we will be providing that to folks based on which version you want. Okay. All right, so I want to get started. It's 5 o'clock, and I want to bring in our guest speaker, Jim Knight. Jim is the Deputy Director of the Administrative Division of the Department of Developmental Services. And I actually remembered your title, Jim, without even looking at it. I'm really shocked at myself. So Jim, I just want to give a little love to Jim. Jim has been around the self-determination program since the law passed. He helped to lead an advisory committee that we had for many years. And those of us who helped to implement the law, like Connie and Harvey, got to know Jim so well. And I know that people love to bash DDS and they love to bash regional centers. There are some good people there, everybody. Jim is one of those good people. And we love him a lot, and we thank him. By the way, he was transferred to a different division, and so we miss him terribly, but in this case, he got involved in the self-determination program. So Jim, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. And I'm hoping that Kira or Ed can spotlight Jim, please.
Great, thanks, Judy, appreciate it. And always happy to be involved with self-determination. As you mentioned, I was lucky enough to help out in at least in some way when after the law was passed, and really enjoyed working with all of you all to get things moving to the extent that they are. And I know there's still more work to do. So thanks for the invite to come. And I don't know, Judy, if you gave kind of a highlight about what I was going to discuss, but or if it would be helpful to show the directive or the letter that's coming out.
Yep, I will get it up on the screen.
Okay.
Do you want to share, or do you want me to share?
Yeah, I can do it. That's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, but before I do that, I know there's been a lot of questions of, hey, how can a self-determination budget be adjusted if the cost of services outside of self-determination, for vendor services, if you will, if those go up, how does that affect the self-determination budget? And so what this letter is trying to do is answer those questions. Certainly, there are going to be some individual situations that may require a little bit more discussion, but this is giving some broad parameters of how that does that. So let me share that, and we'll go through it here, and then we'll have some time for questions. I think I may be sharing the wrong thing. There we go. I think you're seeing the letter now, correct? Okay. So just, and again, I'm not going to read it through, but just we'll go through just kind of the intent of it. One, the first paragraph is really saying that, hey, sometimes for services that are outside of self-determination, those costs go up or the rates go up. And mentions a couple instances. One, there's currently now, if the statewide minimum wage goes up, sometimes providers can get a rate increase as a result of that. Or the big one that's going on now, going into a phased implementation, is what referred to as rate reform, which is based on a rate study that was done a couple of years ago. And just at a high level, one of the outcomes of that rate study is that by July of 2024, if you're providing, not in self-determination, but if you're a vendored provider providing the same services within the same regional center, everybody's going to have the same rate. So same service, same rate in the same area. Again, we're not talking self-determination now, it's for other services. The reason I say that is because when we're doing the rate changes to get to implement this rate study, they're being done a little bit different than they were previously. Kind of in the past, we've done rate changes and rate increases. They've been kind of across the board. So everybody got, let's say, a 5% increase or an 8% increase. This is different. Each provider is going to get a different increase compared to where they are and how far away they are from where the rate study says that their rate should be. And that's going to be important as we go down, because it's not just as easy with self-determination to give, say, an 8% increase in a budget. There has to be a little bit of math involved to it, but we'll go through that here. And then in the second paragraph, it's just saying why we're able to do this, why you're able to adjust the self-determination budget. Because, you know, we're required those budgets, individual budgets, they have to be in self-determination, would have to be no more than what the cost is in without self-determination. So without self-determination, if the cost of the services would increase, your budget in self-determination could increase as well. So we outlined 3 areas here where that would apply, and these are related to when costs or rates would increase in for services outside of self-determination. One was, I mentioned, there's an increase in the state minimum wage. And so the way that would work, and so just for example, the minimum wage is in January is going to increase from $15 to $15.50. Now again, that's the state minimum wage. I realize that there are local minimum wages that are higher, but this is only applicable to state minimum wage, just like it is for providers who are vendors. So if in self-determination, someone is being paid less than $15.50 an hour, then their budget can be increased to beginning January to account for the increased cost. So let's just say that someone right now is being paid $15 an hour. In January, they need to be paid $15.50. So for every hour of service, then we're going to need an extra 50 cents. Well, actually more than that, because there's employer costs that are and taxes that go on top of that. But then the budget then can be increased to account for that increased cost. Again, just like in the service system outside of self-determination, the cost goes up there, and self-determination goes up as well. I also want to skip the second one for now and go to the third one, because both the first and third one kind of are what's happening now while someone is using self-determination. And so the third one, as it says there, if there's a change in rates for a regional center vendor provider who's also providing self-determination services. So if I can just use an example, and let's just say that I run a supported living services agency, and someone who's in self-determination, let's call him Josh, if I may, Judy, has decided he wants to, he'd like me to provide services to them. And we've agreed to say that, hey, let's just agree on a rate to say, let's just, in self-determination, Josh, you're going to pay me the same every hour as what I get from the regional center, my vendor rate. So in this case, let's just say it's $30 an hour. So come April, my vendor rate, because that I talked about a phased approach in the rate study, if my rate goes from $30 to $34 an hour, well, then my cost, Josh's cost, can also increase, meaning his budget can increase to account for that $4 an hour increase. So again, depends on the number of hours that are in Josh's spending plan or budget after that, but the budget can be increased to account for that increased cost. Like I said before, if the cost in the regular kind of system or the regional center system outside of self-determination goes up, the budget in self-determination can go up as well. The second one is, unlike the first two, doesn't really matter who's providing the services or what services you're providing. It really goes back to how your individual budget was calculated to begin with. So in this example, so just, from a high level, your budget was calculated based on how much the regional center paid for services in the previous year, right? So I know that there can be adjustments, but let's kind of keep it simple for now. So let's just say in this example that the cost for services, when we added them all up in the prior 12 months of the previous year, were $5,000. And let's just say all of those were received from me in my example. So let's just say all those services happened before April too, okay? Well, after April, if I were to have used those services, or you were to have used those services, not in self-determination, the cost of those services would have increased, right? Because my rate went up. You don't have to be using my services, but the way that your budget was based on the services that you received from me prior to going to self-determination. So again, if the cost of the services that were in your budget and those providers or those services have rate increases, then the amount of those rate increases can be used to increase your budget going forward as well. So those really are, and I know that they did it kind of quickly, did it kind of high level, but it took a lot longer than it did to read the letter. But certainly happy to answer some questions. I know that there may be some very specific questions that I may or may not be able to answer here, but certainly can follow up with folks if need be separately. So I think with that, I'll open it up to some questions if that works, Judy.
Thank you so much, Jim. We've gotten some good questions in the chat that are important. First of all, you're getting love in the chat from lots of people. So Lourdes actually has her hand up, and she's the first question here. So I'll go ahead and let you ask the question, Lourdes.
Hi. So my question is, so going back the last 12 months, the rate increase went up on April, right? So when they're giving me the budget for the next year, do they use the 8 months that was, $15, or do they give me, like now it's 18? Do they give me the $3 on every hour on the future?
Yeah, so it would be from your budget starting in April, right? So if you've got 8 months left on your budget, then yeah, it would be 8 months worth of that extra cost.
So I have 8 budgets that I received from regional center. So I have to last month from different clients. So all of them I have to request the rate increase to be applied to them because they were given prior to this notice on this month?
Yeah, so folks can work with the regional centers to do the increase. And I know that's going to be some work involved for folks in self-determination and folks helping them as well as regional centers. But yeah, you would have to work with the regional center to make those adjustments.
And remember, everyone, another question is, did the increase apply to all services like respite? So the answer is no, they did not apply to all services. Respite is one that did get an increase, by the way. But how do people know which services got an increase?
So again, it's most services would have a general increase, but it really gets down into the individual provider and how much they got. So like I said, it's not just, hey, respite got 5%. It depends on what that respite provider's rate is or was in before April, and how far away they were from what the rate study said their rate should be. So it's a little complicated. What I can do is show you where and send to you separately where the rate study rates are, where they'll ultimately be. But what you're going to have to work with on the regional center is to figure out what was in the budget when it was calculated, what the rates were for those services there. So that's something that is probably going to have to be done on an individual basis. That's probably not going to be easy to find.
Yeah, so let me try to explain it in a way that folks may not folks will hopefully understand, but you may not know, is that the reason why the rate study was so important, not only because it was increasing rates for service providers who were grossly underfunded, but it's also going to sort of hopefully regulate the rates so that they are consistent across the state for the kinds of services that provider is having, or consistent certainly across a regional center. So folks may not know that there are some service providers who've been providing services for a long time at a much higher rate than new service providers do. And I call it, DDS would never call it this, but I call it a sweetheart deal. That this is a regional center who had a good relationship with the regional center. So the service provider and the regional center agreed on a rate that was much higher than the average rate. If you're being if your budget was developed based on that service provider with a much higher rate, your rates may not increase at all. And so that's the point that Jim was trying to make, is it really depends on who your provider was at the time that your budget was created, and whether that service provider was in the median rate with the average, and therefore they're getting a rate increase, or whether they were at one of the lower ends, one of the higher ends of the rate, and therefore their rate is good. Their rate's never going to go down. Let me be clear. It's not like their rate will go down, but their rate will not increase, and therefore your budget will not increase. This is really, you all need to know this, because I don't want you blaming your regional center or DDS for not getting a rate increase when you're hearing other people are getting a rate increase for that same service, but maybe from a different provider. So when I was talking to Jim to prepare for this meeting today, I said, well, so what should we do? And he said, the best thing to do is to talk to the service provider that you used to have, that your budget was based on. So my son was part of a day program before he went into self-determination. I plan on calling the day program and saying, did you get a rate increase in April? Or did you get another rate increase in July? And that will help me figure out whether my son is eligible for a rate increase and added to his budget. So I know it's a lot more work, but it's worth the work. It's really only a phone call, right? It's really only a phone call that you have to make to the service providers to find out if they got a rate increase. Okay. Connie and Harvey, go ahead.
I just want to say, Jim, you spoke in a way that we could understand, and we are so grateful that you're our spokesperson. I just wanted to say that. I put it in the chat, but it means a lot and it helps. One of our barriers is delay, and part of the delay is when you can't understand what the directions are, and you really made it clear. And thank you, Judy, for doing this.
Thanks, Con.
Thank you.
All right, next question, Jim, comes from Christiana. How does, so this rate is a rate at a specific regional center sometimes, but what if they're a vendor that you were using that was vendored with a different regional center and now had a courtesy vendorization, it still is based on what rate they would have at their original regional center, or I'm not really sure how courtesy vendorship goes.
Well, we could spend a long time on that, but just to simplify it, it's if their rate, whatever it was based on, if that increased, whether it's a courtesy vendor, what have you, in April, then your self-determination budget could increase as well.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So you really just, once again, really need to contact the service providers that it was based off of. Beth is asking, so if a personal assistant hourly rate increased and your budget includes a certain number of personal assistant hours, then our budget would increase based on the new rate?
Yeah, it could, if that's what, if those personal assistant hours for that provider were kind of included in how your budget was built to begin with, then yeah, your self-determination budget could increase as well.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yeah, so Mari's asking where the new rates can be found for all services. So Jim, you were gonna, actually maybe Nina, do you mind, so that Jim can focus on the questions, finding where the rate study is in, it's relatively easy to find on the DDS website. So if you could just drop that in the chat so people have that.
Thanks.
Okay, hold on, I'm still going through questions. Somebody's asking, do the regional centers know this already?
Well, this letter that we showed went out to the regional centers. We're also going to do a training informational meeting with them as well to walk through it, answer questions. And so and as always, just as we are to you all and to the regional centers, available to answer questions on it too. So. And I'll say this again, probably at the end, but if we can just put in the chat, if there are some specific questions, we do have the email address, which is sdp@dds.ca.gov.
So Susan's asking, so will all providers for the same services eventually, once the rate study is completely implemented, will they be compensated the same? And when will all of them be consistent?
Yeah, so that's slated for right now based on the law for July 2024. Although you mentioned that there were some providers that may be already above what the rate study suggests they should be, that just based on the law that they're being, that those won't be reduced for 2 years after that.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Hi, Jim. It's been a long time. We really appreciate you. I have a question for a friend. I have a friend that is a regional client, but they never gotten any kind of services at all. My friend is starting to speak to the regional center about starting their services, IPP and such. How is they are going to calculate my friend's budget where he never used any vendor's services? He wants to go into self-determination and he doesn't want to be in the traditional system at all. How should he go forward where he has no history with any budget with the regional center?
Oh, yeah, Tim, good to see you again. And when you said you were asking for a friend, I didn't know if it was a friend, but it sounds like this really is a friend.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, so, Tim, and I think that is outlined in the law, and I think in some of our prior directives that we've talked about in that case where somebody isn't already using services, that you kind of use some average rates, right? To figure out, hey, what services would be used, and then calculate a budget that can be used in self-determination. And by the way, some questions have asked, since the rates for most providers have gone up, those quote average rates have also gone up as well. So that can be used in the calculation of a budget.
Right. Carla's asking, how come the rate for specialized supervision at Westside Regional Center went down instead of going up?
I may need some more context on that question because, like I said, there've been no rate reductions at this point.
Yeah, Carla, I don't know if you want to be more specific. Oh, there she is. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Hi,
Hello.
Carla.
Yes, I was surprised because I've been in a lot of budget meetings and specifically for specialized supervision, the rate went down actually. And so I asked, why is that? And then they told me that maybe it was increased a little bit because of the, when COVID started but now I guess it went down to whatever, even lower than what it was before. So that was my question, because a lot of the budgets at Westside Regional Center for that particular service are going down.
Well, yeah, so that one maybe we'll have to take offline. If you want to maybe message me and send me your contact information, I can reach out to you and walk through it with you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes.
And I think, Carla, Jim is saying that because specifically no rates can go down. Even though the rate study recommended a whole bunch of rates to go down, the providers organized and they put something in law called hold harmless, meaning no one will be harmed by the rate study. So no rates went down. So I'm not really sure what this is. So if you can, if you have something in writing that shows that, Carla, that would be very helpful to show to Jim. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send you my son's budget because that's happened to him too. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. That would be helpful. Thanks, Carla.
Thank you.
Tommy asks, what if your budget was created based on an unmet need and you did not have a service provider and then did not have a provider in the SDP? How do you determine if that rate was increased? That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. And so that may go back to that kind of following along Tim's question, right? So you probably, in some cases, probably used a quote average rate to figure out what that unmet need would cost. And so if that average rate, in some cases, it may be a median rate. If that increased, then we can use that to increase the self-determination budget as well.
Yeah, so there's something everybody should know called a median rate. Median means average. And so in some cases, regional centers, when you are getting a service that you didn't have in the traditional system, or let's say it's like for my son, when he moves out, he'll have supported living services for the first time. But there is a way to determine those rates based on the individual's needs. When we say that rates will be consistent within a regional center, it's not like everybody who's getting supported living is getting exactly the same supported living. There will be some supported living providers who are getting a higher rate because the person has more significant needs. Let's say they have some nursing level needs, or they have self-regulation challenges, those kinds of things that require people to have a higher level of skills who are providing that service. That rate might end up being higher, or let's say they're deaf, or they require specific language supports. That rate may end up being higher than the median rate. So that's why Jim is talking very specifically about individualizing your rates based on what your specific needs are, based on the type of provider that you would need. So Sunny, I saw your hand up. I don't know if it's a follow-up to one of the questions, or you had a new question? Oh, there you go. No? There you are. Okay. Oh, no. Go ahead. There we go. No, so if folks on my end, they keep muting you after I ask you to unmute. No, don't touch Sunny. No, you touch it, Sunny. No, I'm telling them not to touch you.
Okay.
There you go.
I have a question, but I'm seeing so many great questions in the chat. My question is not, there's so many good ones. Do you want me to ask it now or wait?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my question, David Castaneda has a similar question to me. So he said, what if the participant has been using individuals instead of vendors for the last 2 or 3 years? Can the regional center go back to the original budget from 2 or 3 years ago? And my question is along the same line. So what we're seeing at some regional centers is that after the first year, they're not looking at the traditional system rates when they're redoing the budget after the first year. They're looking at what did you spend in self-determination, and then were there unmet needs? And so we have people who are like in their 3rd year of self-determination now, and we've been pointing this out as a problem in the budget negotiations all along, because you can't even, you would have to go through like piles and piles of paperwork, especially for people who have, their needs have changed and there have been budget amendments, to figure out where did these numbers even come from. And so now it's going to be really hard to go back and try to like recreate the budget to figure out what rates is this budget even based on. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts on how to solve that problem? So it seems to me, just my opinion, that budgets should always be recorded based on the traditional system for this reason. But
yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, Sunny. And so as you're kind of farther into self-determination, make it a little bit more complicated, that we're going to have to work through some more steps to apply this, but it still can be, right? I mean, it still started with what was spent in the traditional system, and there were some adjustments along the way. But I still think you can apply this letter to those same things. It is going to take some more steps, though.
Okay. I totally understand what Sunny's asking, because that is kind of like the crux is that if your budget was first based on the traditional system, then you're in year 3 or 4, and they're just looking at other things. You know, here's the thing, and this is a question Kelly was asking. If your budget is fine and meets your needs right now, will the regional centers automatically just add this into next year's budget planning? And so, you know, one of the questions I think that's important to know is, you know, your budget's supposed to be based on your previous year's expenses, but it's also originally based on what you got in the traditional system. And when you add new services in, it's based on, you know, what you would get in the traditional system. These are conundrums. I don't know how you translate conundrum into Korean and Spanish, but these are conundrums that we at DVU recognize are a problem. And I can tell you that so does ARCA, so does Disability Rights California, and we were literally just having this conversation earlier today about this issue. And there has to be some clarification on it. But I don't know if you want to add anything more, Jim, on that.
No, other than I would agree, right? That I think is, like I said, it gets a little harder to follow the kind of the intent of the law as people get further into self-determination. And so I think we need to work collectively on some suggestions for how to address that.
Yeah. But overall, Kelly, when you say are the regional centers going to automatically add this to your budget? I don't think they are. If you read the words of the directive, it says that participants or their representatives should contact their regional center. And actually, I'm really okay with that, because there are some people who have very robust budgets who may not need an adjustment to their budget. Remember, there's the responsibility piece of this, where if our needs are being met, we don't need to add to our budget just to add to our budget. You are adding to your budget because your needs are not being met by the current budget amount. And so, but of course it does put that burden. I would hope maybe regional centers would reach out to us to just see, but because most people don't actually trust the regional center, they're always going to say yes to an increase in the budget, whether they need it or not. And that's the long road we have to go in the self-determination program, is to build back that trust between us and the regional centers. Okay. Okay, so Yang Yang is asking, they're in their first year of the self-determination program. Is the budget being increased because of the inflation? I think Yang Yang means because of the increase. It's not really inflation, but it's because of the increase. Yes, even if you're in your first year of the program, your budget will still be adjusted if it meets the qualifications, right, Jim?
Right.
Okay. Denise asks, oh, she doesn't know what a courtesy vendor is. And then also wants to repeat the address to access the service rates. If that could be placed in the chat one more time. But what is a courtesy vendor, Jim? I know it's one of your favorite things to ever talk about.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. Essentially, a courtesy vendor is you've got a provider that is vendored, let's just say in Westside's area, but then they also provide some services in Harbor Regional Center or another regional center. And so in that case, then those other regional centers are just using the vendorization from Westside for that provider. It's more of a term of art, I guess you will, but it's just another way to for providers to provide services in different areas of the state.
Sunny had another question in the chat, which is, shouldn't the regional center be able and willing to look up the service provider's new rates for you in Sandus? Sandus is this computer system that regional centers use, than making you go personally and through the trouble of contacting your service provider.
Yeah, and I think Judy gave one way to find out, and certainly the other way is to work with the regional center to do that too.
Yeah. And so it all, to me, I like to hear directly from the source, from the service provider. So, but your regional center could certainly support you with this. Okay, I'm just going through all of the questions. Okay, Debbie asks, when working with the regional center on the budget, what kind of printed documentation should they be able to provide to show what the rates have been for individual vendors?
What kind of printed, well, I guess what kind would you want to see? I mean, it should be pretty simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, this is that trust thing that I've been talking about, Jim, that people will say to the regional center will say, okay, this vendor didn't get a rate increase, or this vendor got a 2% rate increase. And you may come back and think, no, they actually got a 10% rate increase. And this is why, you can call your service provider and find that out.
Yeah. So regional centers have to, and they do in their system, they keep a history of rates for each provider. And so if you wanted to verify and ask for that rate history, that's something that they can provide you.
Great. Julia, you have your hand raised. Go ahead. Can you unmute, Julia?
Oh, sorry. It was.
There you go. Yeah.
Let me not raise my hand. It was a mistake.
Oh, it was a mistake. You got it. No problem. Okay, Samantha asks, if a person has the service and then the agency rate goes into the SDP budget, but if it's a new need, the participant directed average rate, which are always much lower, why aren't the median agency rates used? Samantha, I saw you here. I'm not sure I completely understand that question. I'm not sure if you're still there. Oh, there you are. Would you like to ask that question verbally? Go ahead. Go ahead, Samantha. You're unmuted.
Hi there.
Hi.
So when a participant in the traditional services has had, say, SLS with an agency and they elect to go into self-determination, they'll get that agency rate factored into the budget. But if we have a brand new, say, 22-year-old or 23-year-old that's going through changes in their lives and they decide to do SLS, they'll get participant directed SLS rates, the median of that put into their budget. And those are usually much lower, and I was just wondering why.
That's a good question. Didn't think that that's really should be how it's done. And so, yeah, I can put my, if you want to send the email to the DVS, the SDP at dvs.ca.gov, and then I can reach out to you and we can walk through that. Because it really is supposed to be the comparison of what that service would cost pre-self-determination, is that cost should go into the self-determination budget. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Sally asks, I actually am looking at both the chat and this little document we have, and I didn't see this in the document, that their first SDP budget was calculated in 2019, and their rates go back that far. So if your budget has not been adjusted since 2019, by the way, guys, it's not like the rates went up in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Rates went up for the very first time in April of 2022. So you haven't missed any previous rate increases, okay? But it would be the same exact thing, Sally, for the rate increases as the for a person who's just came in January, okay? Vivian asks, will providers in self-determination eventually be eligible for bilingual pay differentials, the DSP university pay tiers, the quality incentive payments, and other similar pay structures coming down the pike?
I think it's all good questions. I think, and then conversely with that, or along with that, is then we need to, again, make sure the budgets, or if we're going to pay them outside the budget, make sure that that can, that those payments can be made. So I do think that, I know that that's part of when we're putting the program together, that we want to make sure that folks who are providing services and self-determination are included in that.
So folks may not know what Vivian's question was asking, but basically in the state budget, they're in the traditional system, individuals providing services who speak a language other than English and are providing that service in another language will get a higher rate, higher salary, higher wage, okay? And so that means providers are getting a higher amount of money to pay these folks. There's also, people get bonuses for going to direct support professional university. There's all these kind of payments if you're meeting better outcomes. And so we know that there's been a lot of efforts in that regard. And I'm never quite sure whether the self-determination program is even thought about as those programs are being rolled out. So, you know, we will make sure that we have that advocacy, and Jim will now be watching on that as well. Okay. Ishika's asking, if a client wants to go to an out-of-state university, so this is not about the rate increases, but wants to go out to an out-of-state university, is there any way to request that self-determination helps with the expenses that being in an out-of-state university would generate?
Yeah, I know there's been some questions on this as well. I don't, and I'll have to check back on kind of what the status is on some direction and guidance on that.
Yeah, my recollection is that you cannot use the self-determination program when you go out of state. But yeah, maybe some adjustment has made since the beginning.
Yeah, I'll verify where that landed.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, I see Robert Levy. Go ahead and ask your question.
I had a question about self-determination. You said, Jim said it said July 2024, and then you said another 2 years. What he said up to, wouldn't that be up to 2026, July 2026?
Yeah, it would. And that's for those providers who already have rates that are above where the rate study says that they should be. So those folks, and Judy mentioned it's hold harmless, and that's in the law, so no rates would be reduced before July of 2026.
So that means it start in 2024, and you wait another 2 years, that's July 2026, that's almost 4 years from now.
For those providers. For everyone else, they'll be at the same rate for the same service at the same rate in the same regional center. It'll be in July of 2024.
It's the same rate for as everybody else.
Right.
But then you said the one that were late, right? They have to wait another 2 years, will be July 2026, right?
Yeah, for those providers whose rates are already higher than the rest of the folks. Yeah.
Only higher, not lower.
Yeah.
The
not
ones that are lower than the stay at 2024.
They're gonna be increased and to get to the rate study rate. That's
In
right.
July 2024, but then the ones that are started now, then they're gonna start July 2026.
Right.
They'll-
They'll keep their rate
Yeah.
as it is
They'll keep
now.
their rate.
And then in July of 2026, it'll be reduced to what
They'll be
the others' rates are.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that. Stella asks in the chat, should parents increase our caregivers' salary rates according to the market, even though they don't ask for a raise? Well, that's probably not a question that Jim can answer because that's an individualized question. In my opinion, if you have the budget to pay someone more, you should be paying them more, because the people who support us or our family members, to me, are priceless. And so if you have the budget to give them a raise, you should do that. You should do that before you do other things, because in this market, it is very hard to find good staff, right? And so you want to be able to pay people more than they make at McDonald's and to keep them in the job with you. But that's a really good question, Stella.
And Judy, before you go on, I'm probably got time for another 2 or 3 questions.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so let me ask you this one then. For clients with very large budgets greater than 200,000, will the FMS be reimbursed more than a person with a smaller budget? They're not really reimbursed, but they have a rate. Every FMS has a rate.
Yeah, they have a rate, and I know we've heard some concerns about that. That is something that we're looking to at the structure for our FMS rates, and something that we're trying to address here pretty quickly. So right now, I know that we have on some individual basis worked with some FMSs to do some rate adjustments. And so if you want to reach out to the email address that I've mentioned, we can work through and see what options there may be. Again, that's sdp@dds.ca.gov.
Right. I'm going to let Susan ask the final question to you before you go, Jim.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. First of all, I have 2 questions. So are there going to be a table of rates on this new increases of the rates, like a table where we can base it on? Because we are getting a different, different prices from the DDS and from the regional center. So we're really confused about it. Are we going to get a rate later on it, on the prices, on the salary or raises that was raised up?
Yeah, and so I empathize with why it's confusing, because quite honestly, it's confusing for folks who are involved in it all the time. And one of the reasons why we did the rate study is because there is so much variation in the rates now, even for the same service. So the short answer is no, we don't have a simple table that can show you what each provider's rate is. And that is why either, as Judy suggested, you can talk to your providers that you are or were using, or work with a regional center to get that information. Once we get to July of 2024, we will have those standard rates that were put in the link in the chat a couple times. But for right now, there is just so much difference. It's really hard to get a table that broad,
Okay,
so I apologize.
Thank you. I have a second question also. The regional center is already putting a deadline on the end of December for the state of emergency, personal assistant hours. They said that by January 1st, everyone will be in person. But DDS hasn't really declared that it's the end of the state of emergency, and the mayor Newman hasn't done it either, because they're saying that the COVID is going to be up again by January, and they want our children to be in the outside already, not virtual. I mean, I don't even know if my son will be able to do that, or I'm scared that he might get COVID. So it's like, it's a very confusing thing. Do I bring my kid personally to their jobs now, or to their day center with COVID up by winter? So who's deciding what? They're cutting my SOEPAS hours by the end of the year.
Yeah, so again, I think we can get into some more specifics with you if you want to reach out directly, but just in general, there was a change in statute that went along with this budget, that kind of what has been referred to as, quote, alternative services. And that's where providers are essentially reimbursed a monthly rate instead of daily or hourly. That kind of program or system is going to end at the end of the year, but people can still get services remotely, even now and then after that, through what's called a tailored day service. So there are still some options to do some remote services. And then we'll still, as you mentioned, hey, if there's an increase in that, we're going to monitor that, and we can make some adjustments as we go. But at this point, the plan is that for the remote services, that's going to be through what's called a tailored day option, beginning in January.
And remember, Susan, that if your son is in, or your client is in self-determination, no one tells you have to go to a group program. First of all, group programs, if you don't have choice and control of your life, are not compliant for the self-determination program. So you should not be forced into doing anything you don't want to do in self-determination. You can create a very individualized program that works for you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Jim, I'm going to let you go because I know that you have given us your time, and we really, really appreciate it. And thank you for this really important and well done directive. We thank you. We thank Nancy Bargeman. We thank DDS, because we think that this is the most fair way to do it, is to treat people in the self-determination program equally to the traditional system. And thank you for everything.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for all of you for what you do, and look forward to continuing to work as we continue to move forward with this. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate you. So we're going to continue on. We have another 10 minutes in the with SDP Connect. And I want to try to get some more questions answered as best as we can do that. So I'm going to go to Connie Boyer. Go ahead, Connie. Connie, can you unmute?
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry. And yep. If this question was asked before, please forgive me. We had a fire alarm in my building and I had to exit.
Annoying.
So, yes, upsetting. Anyway, so my question has to do with it, and that's my dog who's barking at me. He's all wrecked too, so sorry about that. I had a question about like SLS and group homes. Spartan, no. Regarding the rate increases being given to them, is there any way that we can determine when we're in the process of getting self-determination, what is going to be a fair wage to the direct service providers? Because what I understand is that once they're given a lump sum, the SLS and group homes, sorry, my dog Spartan, no. And they're given a lump sum, and we wouldn't know whether those actual increases are actually being, how can I say, funneled to the direct service provider, or is the owner, director, whoever taking, in other words, how will we determine what's a fair salary? Will we know how much a DSP is supposed to be given?
So Connie, I'm not sure, I need a clarification of your question. Are you asking about how the budget is developed, the individual budget is developed based on somebody who lives in a group home? Or are you asking about the spending plan once somebody is in the self-determination program, how you figure out how to pay a person?
Actually, and my dog, why don't you come back to me in a minute? I can't
Okay.
speak with the dog.
All right, we'll
barking.
come back.
Sorry.
All right. Go ahead, Rick. Did you have a question, Rick? Not sure if you're still typing out your question. All right, let me know when you are ready, Rick, and you can just go ahead and unmute. There's a question in the chat saying, I don't know if SDP is better than traditional services. It sounds like it is. However, my son's expenditure report broke down allotment of what his budget needs have been based on what the regional center would allow. I have a lot of distrust with the regional center because they've lied without consideration of parental obligations, natural supports, and available resources in favor of the regional center's obligation to the most cost-effective service delivery option. And they've done this at the burden and detriment of families by not better informing disabled individuals and vulnerable populations. We only received 8 years of respite and med alert bracelets. That's all the services I guess they've gotten. If we go to SDP, would we be allowed budget negotiations because potentially his 12-month spending plan only equates to respite? If we were to do SDP, our funds need to cover more. So I'm not really sure if you are talking about a child getting only respite and a bracelet, but it is true that children's budgets are smaller. They are eligible for fewer services because the school districts tend to have to provide the services for people. But you can certainly try to make a case as you develop your individual budget that there were unmet needs in the traditional system. And you can explain what those unmet needs are. You remember that those needs need to be in the traditional system, not in self-determination. So let's say you're a child and you're only getting respite, but you have a tremendous need for socialization skills or adaptive community skills, and you haven't been receiving that service in the traditional system. You make the case in your goals for the need for that service. You then ask for that service to be provided so that that money would then go into your budget. And if the regional center agrees with you, that money for that service would go into your budget. You don't necessarily have to use the same service in the self-determination program, but you have to make a case for the kinds of services DDS provides in the traditional system. All right. We have a lot of really good videos on that in our library. Okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Judy, she is asking about her staff wage and self-determination. For example, SLS agency has overhead cost versus SDP participant has no overhead cost. Connie is trying to figure out a fair wage for her staff in SDP.
Okay, so because she was talking about group homes. So that's why I got a little bit confused, Tim. So Connie, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, thank you about Spartan. He's now in the bathroom.
Okay, good. Poor Spartan.
So in January, so I'll just mention, I was just using group homes as another example, but in January, supported living agencies are going to be given more funding. My question is there a way to know how much the direct care staff are going to be paid in the SLS? So then when we transition to SDP, we will have a better idea of how much direct care staff were being paid and then what we should pay. Because what I'm seeing is that the owners, directors of SLS may not tell you actually how much their staff is being paid. And I'm trying to figure out, well, with these increases, what is going to be the rate? And obviously we may want to give more, but I have no idea. Is anyone
Right.
monitoring the amount that will actually happen and be paid to the direct care staff?
There's no way for you to know. They are not required to tell you either. It's actually one of the things that irritated me during the debate on rate increases, because we argued at DVU that if there are rate increases, they should be going primarily to increasing the wages of the direct support professionals, the people who are working directly with people with disabilities. But there is not necessarily a requirement for that, Connie. The owner of the agency could pocket all of the rate increases and not increase the salaries of their workers. They are allowed to do that. So,
but it's hard then to determine what you should be paying if you have no idea what the going rate out there is.
right. So Lori Shepherd is recommending you go onto Indeed and you look at, you might be able to find the service provider and see what they're offering on Indeed. But here's my feeling. Pay them as much as you can possibly pay them. Like, figure out your budget and figure out all the things that you don't need, that you go in and you're like, do you really need that, that whatever, that item you were going to buy, that pair of socks or that, whatever that is. Your bulk of your funding from the self-determination program absolutely should go to the staff that keep you in the community and support you every day. And you should work backwards and say, what is the most I can possibly pay them? Because that is the way you attract good staff. So, I mean, I hope that helps. And I'm realizing that we have only one more minute. So Rick, did you have a quick comment that you wanted to make? I see that you unmuted.
I am going to get a new wheelchair in 2 or 3 months. I will want an elevator seat that my insurance won't pay for, but I will need self-determination pay. When should I have requested? Before or after the denial?
After the denial. That's a great question, Rick. Remember that insurance needs to deny your services first, and then you can show that denial to your regional center so that you can then add it to your spending plan. But great question, Rick. And I apologize to Connie and Harvey because we are out of time, everybody. Remember that we are committed to providing interpretation in both Spanish and English, Spanish and Korean. And we lose our interpreters at exactly 6 o'clock because they have to organize themselves and know when they're going to be off work. We thank everybody so much for joining us today. We will be back in 2 weeks with our next STP Connect, where we will go into more details. That's, I believe, October 12th. I will not be at the STP Connect because I will be high up on a mountain in the Himalayas in Nepal. But
Wow.
You will be in great hands with all of our staff at DVU, and you will be fine. And I will be back for the next STP Connect on October 26th, which is my 60th birthday. So feel free to come and wish me happy birthday in 2 STP Connects from now. And thank you all. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.